Hi everybody. In this video we are going to discuss about the chemical coordination and integration. Chemical coordination and integration. As we all know, there are different types of systems in our body. One of the major important system is the nervous system. Okay, nervous system, but which we are also calling it as neural system. So neural system will be controlling and coordinating various physiological activities in our body. But these messages that are carried by the nervous system are very short-lived. So that's why in order to bring up these physiological activities, okay, continuously, there is also another system which is jointly performing these physiological activities. That is nothing but the endocrine system. Endocrine system. So here, neural system and endocrine system jointly they bring up physiological activities. They jointly bring up the physiological activities. At the same time, now if you are seeing in this particular chapter now, we are going to contemplate or concentrate on the hormones or the chemicals that are produced from this endocrine system, which will be helping in the physiological activities, to perform the physiological activities. Now here if you are seeing, those chemicals that are produced from the endocrine system are called as the hormones. These are the hormones. So here when we say that it is the endocrine system, the first 2 points that you have to remember is the what do you mean by the word endocrine, and there is another word called as exocrine. Endocrine and exocrine. So here endocrine means these are the special glands, endocrine glands, okay, endocrine glands. These glands are called as the ductless glands, okay, these are also called as the ductless glands. And these ductless glands, okay, these ductless glands will not produce these secretions directly outside the body, but they will be secreting, or whatever these glands are producing, they will be pouring out these secretions directly into the bloodstream. Okay, they will be pouring out their secretions into the blood. But whereas there is another type of glands, those are called as the exocrine glands. These exocrine glands, okay, exocrine glands are called as the duct glands. Okay, these are called as the duct glands. Means what? They will be having sac-like structure. So the secretions that are produced in these sacs are now directly poured out, but they will not enter inside into the blood. Okay, so here we have to remember that they do not, okay, enter into the blood. Okay, they do not enter into the blood. So what is not entering into the blood now? The secretions that are produced either by the ductless glands or the duct glands, means endocrine glands and exocrine glands, both are producing certain secretions. Okay, certain secretions are produced, and these secretions, now if you see, from endocrine glands they are released into the blood, and from exocrine glands they are not entering into the blood. They are directly poured out. Means for example here for the exocrine glands, we can take the sweat glands. So here if you are seeing the sweat glands, okay, the sweat is produced directly onto the surface of the body. Even if you are talking about the salivary glands, they produce the saliva into the mouth. The saliva will not enter into the blood, or the sweat that is produced from these sweat glands will not enter inside into the blood. Even in the case of lacrimal glands that are there related to the eyes, the lacrimal glands produces tears. Even the tears will not enter inside into the blood. But those glands, such glands where their secretions are not released into the blood and at the same time having ducts, are called as exocrine glands. But here endocrine glands. In this chapter we are going to discuss about the endocrine glands. These are ductless glands and their secretions are directly poured into the blood. So here the best example that we can give, the master gland called as the pituitary gland. Okay, the master gland called as the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland, what all the secretions that it produces, it will be pouring it into the bloodstream, and blood will be carrying these secretions to the target organs. So here you should remember that the secretions that are produced from the endocrine glands are released into the blood. Example is pituitary gland. And at the same time, now what are these secretions or what are these chemicals that are produced? The chemicals that are produced from this endocrine glands are called as the hormones. The secretions or the synthesis, that is the chemical substances that are produced from the endocrine glands are called as the hormones. So these hormones are chemicals. Okay, these hormones are chemicals, but these chemicals are non-nutrients. These chemicals are non-nutrients. So here the point we have to remember, hormones are chemicals which are non-nutrients, and these are involved in intracellular. They are acting as the intracellular messengers. These hormones are acting as what now? As intracellular messengers. They are carrying messages from one cell to another cell and helping these cells to perform what? The physiological activities. Because why it is? Because the neural system by itself cannot bring up all those physiological activities, because the impulse or the nervous system is producing the impulse, that those impulses are short-lived. So that's why endocrine system is also involved in bringing up various physiological activities. By what? By producing what? Hormones. Those hormones are nothing but the chemicals which are non-nutrients and involved in intracellular messages. And these hormones, they are not produced in large quantities. They are produced in very, very minute quantities. In fact, we will use the word called as trace amounts. They are produced in trace amounts. Very small or minute quantities of these hormones are produced. But their action, or they are involved in very, very important activities. These hormones should not be produced in more quantity, should not be produced in less quantity. And these hormones are always should always be produced in sufficient quantity. They should be produced in sufficient quantity. If they are produced in more quantity, then they may cause some disorder. If these hormones are produced in less quantity, then also they can cause some disorders. So here point you have to remember that hormones are always produced in sufficient quantity. They should not be produced in more quantity. They should not be produced in less quantity. If they are produced in more quantity, we will be using the word hypersecretion. Whenever the hormone is produced in more quantity, we will be using the word hypersecretion, which leads to what? Hyperactivity, and due to which it may lead to what? A particular disorder. And at the same time, if it is produced in less quantity, we will be calling it as hyposecretion. And when it is produced in hyposecretion, it may lead to hypoactivity. Means the role of that particular hormone is reduced. Okay, it is reduced. The role of that particular hormone is reduced. So we call it as what? Hypoactivity. Even then also it leads to what? Disorder. Okay, it leads to disorder. Is it clear? So here we have to remember these words: hypersecretion, hyposecretion. So here for hyposecretion, we also use another simple word called as deficiency. We use. So here, that's the point we have to remember regarding the hormones. So here, the study of these endocrine glands, so is called as the endocrinology. Okay, the study of endocrine glands is called as endocrinology. The study of endocrine glands is called as endocrinology. And these endocrine glands, whenever they are producing only when they are producing the hormones, they are called as holocrines. Okay, they are called as holocrine. Please remember this word. Whenever an endocrine gland is producing only hormones, we will be calling it as what? Holocrine gland. But if these endocrine glands, along with the hormones, if it is producing even the other secretions, like if they are produced in other secretions, we call such glands as what? Heterocrine glands. So here, point that we have to remember. Okay, example for holocrine gland. Let us name it as the thyroid gland. Okay, thyroid gland we can say. But here, if you are talking about the heterocrine gland. Hetero means it is performing dual role. It is acting in producing the hormones and at the same time other secretions also. The best example here is the pancreas. So here, if you are looking at the pancreas, pancreas is producing the hormones and at the same time it also produces pancreatic juice. Pancreatic juice are not hormones. It contains what? Enzymes. So here you have to remember that pancreas is producing the pancreatic juice. Okay, it is producing the pancreatic juice. Pancreatic juice is containing some digestive enzymes. Okay, it contains the digestive enzymes. Enzymes that are required in digesting the food material. And at the same time, pancreas is also producing hormones called as what? Insulin and glucagon. So here, very clearly it is understood now that pancreas is now acting as an endocrine gland and also as an exocrine gland. Pancreas is acting as an endocrine gland as well as exocrine gland. That's why we are calling the pancreas as what? Heterocrine gland. We are calling this pancreas as what? Heterocrine gland. When it is acting as both as endocrine and as well as exocrine gland. So these two again, they are very important points we have to keep in mind. So what do you mean by endocrinology? Study of endocrine glands. So in that you should remember the what do you mean by holocrine and what do you mean by heterocrine glands. Now another point is that these hormones are produced even in invertebrates. They are produced even in invertebrates. Like for example, we can take the insects. Okay, we can take the insects where there are some hormones that will help in bringing up molting stages. Okay, they bring up molting stages and juvenile phase, means for their growth and for the changes in their life cycle, there will be certain hormones that will be involved. And that's why we say that hormones are very few that are produced in what? Invertebrates. But hormones are playing a very, very crucial role in the case of what? Vertebrates. In the case of vertebrates. So here we have to remember that these invertebrates are producing only some hormones, but whereas the vertebrates are producing more hormones. So here we are going to discuss about the hormones that are produced by the humans now. And now we are going to look at the human endocrine system. So in this chapter we are going to clearly discuss in detail about the hormones that are produced from our endocrine glands that are present in our body. So here there are various cells or tissues that are present in different parts of our body. There are tissues that are there present, okay, or we can say that the cells that are present in different locations in our body which are acting as the endocrine glands. So the most important endocrine gland that is present in our body is called as the pituitary gland. Okay, it is called as the pituitary gland. So the first one is the pituitary gland. Of course, it is also called as the master gland. It is also called as the master gland because it controls and coordinates all the other glands that are present in our body at different locations, at different places in our body. So here the first gland, a very important gland, is the pituitary gland, and the other one is the pineal gland. Okay, the other one is called as the pineal gland. So this is the second gland that is present in our body, and then followed by the third one is the thyroid gland. Okay, this is the thyroid gland, third one, and the next one, after the thyroid gland, we can say that there is another one called as parathyroid gland. Okay, parathyroid gland. This is another gland, the fourth gland, parathyroid gland. And then followed by there is another gland called as the thymus gland. Okay, there is another gland called as the thymus gland, and there is another one after the thymus gland. There is also called as the adrenal gland. Okay, adrenal gland. Here the sixth one is the adrenal gland, and the seventh one is the pancreas, which we also came across, saying that the pancreas is as what? Heterocrine gland, because it is acting as endocrine gland and also acting as what? Exocrine gland. It is acting as endocrine to producing hormones. It is acting as exocrine by producing pancreatic juice containing different types of digestive enzymes which are directly poured into what? Into the digestive system to digest different types of substances that are there present in our food material that we have taken. So here pancreas is the heterocrine gland. And the next one is the gonads. Gonads is a word that is used both for the testes that are present in the males, okay, males, and the ovaries that are present in the females, ovaries that are there present in the females. So here in this chapter, under human endocrine system, we are going to discuss about all these glands, about how, what happens or what are the hormones that are produced by the pituitary gland, what are the hormones produced by the pineal gland, and followed by all the other glands. And at the same time, we are going to understand what will happen if that particular gland, if it is producing that hormone in more quantity, the hormone that is produced by thyroid gland. If, for example, thyroxine is the hormone that is produced by the thyroid gland. If that thyroxine is produced in more quantity, what is the disorder? If the thyroxine is produced in less quantity, what is the disorder? Those are the points which we are going to understand about each and every gland. So here another point we have to keep in mind. Even though we use the simple word as diseases are caused due to the deficiency or because of the hypersecretion, that we should keep in one point in mind. Please remember, in all the cases, we will not call them as diseases. For example, there is one hormone produced by the pituitary gland called as growth hormone. Growth hormone is produced sometimes in more quantity. In such people, they are called as what? They are called as gigantism. Okay, they are represented as one disorder named as gigantism. So gigantism means when they are very tall, when they are in their body, when growth hormone is produced in more quantity. And the same growth hormone, if it is produced in very less quantity, then what is required? The person will be very short. In both the cases, we cannot call gigantism is as a disease. Dwarfness is as a disease because it is not a disease, but it is a disorder, because it will not affect the activities of a particular person. Physiological activities will not be affected because they are tall, because they are short. So in such cases, we exclusively use one word called as what? It is a disorder, but we will not say that it is as a disease. So however, we are going to understand about all these glands, and the most important part of this chapter is that all these glands, okay, all these glands are under control of what? Okay, under the control of what? So all these glands are under the control of the one region called as what? The hypothalamus. Okay, hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a region that is present in what now? It is present in the brain. Okay, it is present in the brain. So here the base of the forebrain, here this part we call this as what? The hypothalamus. We are calling this as the hypothalamus. So this part, hypothalamus, is rich in containing the many number of neurosecretory cells. Very important point we have to remember. Of course, we all know that the brain is made up of what? Nerve cells. Brain is made up of nerve cells. But here the point is that we are highlighting those nerves as what? Neurosecretory cells. Means these cells are involved in secretion. What are these secretions? They are certain chemicals that are produced from the nerve cells that are present in what? In the hypothalamus. In the hypothalamus. So neurosecretory cells are producing what we are saying? Chemicals. So what are these chemicals? What are these chemicals? Now these chemicals are nothing but the hormones. These chemicals are nothing but the hormones. So point you have to remember is that hormones are also produced by what now? The hypothalamus region of the brain. Hypothalamus region of the brain. Hypothalamus region of the brain is containing special cells, as same as the other cells of course, but these are called as neurosecretory cells. Neurosecretory cells. These neurosecretory cells are producing certain chemicals. They are producing certain chemicals, and these chemicals are called as what now? Hormones. These chemicals are hormones. And these hormones, of course, they are also called as the neurohormones. These are also called as the neurohormones. But otherwise, these hormones or neurohormones are nothing but they are called as they are neurohormones or hormones. Okay, these are the hormones which we are calling them as what? They are produced from hypothalamus. Okay, hypothalamus. Either they are called as the hormones or the neurohormones. Now we will discuss about how these hormones are produced, and these hormones that are called as hormones or neurohormones are also called as what now? The releasing factors. They are called as the releasing factors. Okay, they are called as the releasing factors. They are called as the releasing factors. Hormones now that are released from the hypothalamus are called as what now? Releasing factors. They are called as the releasing factors. So you have to remember that releasing factors are the hormones, otherwise neurohormones, that are produced from the hypothalamus region of the brain, because in the hypothalamus region there are neurosecretory cells that are producing these hormones, which are also called as the releasing factors. So here, if you are seeing this particular hypothalamus region, okay, it is producing two groups. Okay, it is producing two groups of hormones. Okay, two groups of hormones are produced. Okay, two groups of hormones are produced from the hypothalamus region. So what are those two groups of hormones? What are those two groups of hormones that are produced from the hypothalamus? First group hormones produced from hypothalamus are called as the stimulating hormones. Are called as the stimulating hormones. Stimulating hormones. And the second group are called as the inhibitory hormones. Are called as the inhibitory hormones. Means, in simple, let us try to understand. Any gland, endocrine gland, if it is trying to produce more secretion of that particular hormone, it is this hypothalamus which will be controlling the production or the secretion of those hormones from these glands. From these glands. Means what? It will inhibit. It will be sending messages to the pituitary gland to control all the other glands not to produce in more quantity, because any hormone, first of all, it is produced in trace amounts only, and it should not be produced in more quantity. If it is producing in more quantity, what we said, hyperactivity. Okay, hypersecretion we are saying, which leads to hyperactivity, then it leads to a disorder, we said. If it is produced in less quantity, we are saying that hypoactivity, which is nothing but hyposecretion, which also leads to what? Disorder, we are saying. So in both the cases, if it is produced in less quantity, now the hypothalamus will be producing what? Stimulating hormones. Hypothalamus produces the stimulating hormones, and these stimulating hormones goes and stimulate what? Pituitary gland. Then the pituitary gland will be stimulating the other glands to produce the particular hormones in sufficient quantity. If these glands are producing more amount of the hormones, then the pituitary gland will be receiving messages from what? Hypothalamus. Then the hypothalamus is sending the messages to not to allow the other glands to produce more amount of those hormones. That's the point here we have to remember here. So stimulating hormones and inhibitory hormones are the two groups of hormones that are produced from the hypothalamus region. So now, as we said that hypothalamus produces two types of hormones. Hypothalamus produces two types of hormones. The first one is called as what? Stimulating hormones. Stimulating hormones. So let us see and understand it in a better way with an example. So here, let us take the hypothalamus region. Okay. So here, the hypothalamus is releasing hormones. Hypothalamus is releasing hormones called as releasing factors. Releasing factors. So hypothalamus is producing one hormone called as gonadotropin releasing hormone. Gonadotropin releasing hormone. Gonadotropin releasing hormone is produced from the hypothalamus. So here, gonadotropin releasing hormone is a releasing factor. It is a hormone that is produced from hypothalamus. So this gonadotropin releasing hormone now enters into the bloodstream and now reaches to what now? It reaches to the pituitary gland. Okay, it reaches to the pituitary gland. Now the pituitary gland is now, okay, stimulated. It is activated. Let us say it is activated with what now? Gonadotropin releasing hormone. So when this gonadotropin releasing hormone activates the pituitary gland, now the pituitary gland produces gonadotropins. Okay, produces gonadotropins. What are these gonadotropins? These are the hormones which are also called as the luteinizing hormone, and also there is another one called as follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, LH, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. So here what we are trying to understand is that this is the first group of hormones which are called as what? Stimulating hormones. Hypothalamus is releasing gonadotropin releasing hormone, which will go and stimulate or activate the pituitary gland to produce what? Gonadotropins, such as luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. And there is another group called as what now? Inhibitory hormones we are saying. There is another group called as what? Inhibitory hormones. Okay, inhibitory hormones. This is the second type of, okay, group of hormones that are produced from the hypothalamus. So here also, if you are taking the hypothalamus, okay, is also producing a hormone. Okay, it is also producing a hormone which is now called as somatostatin. Okay, somatostatin. In short, we call it as SS. We call it as somatostatin. So this somatostatin is a hormone which is produced from what? Hypothalamus, which is produced from the hypothalamus. Somatostatin now it reaches to the pituitary gland. It reaches to the or enters into the pituitary gland. But here, after entering into the pituitary gland, remember somatostatin is inhibiting. It is inhibiting. It inhibits. Okay, it inhibits the pituitary gland not to produce the hormone called as what now? The growth hormone. Okay, it will not allow the secretion or production of what now? The growth hormone. So here somatostatin is an inhibitory hormone. Somatostatin is an inhibitory hormone which is produced from the hypothalamus, and it is inhibiting or not allowing the pituitary gland to produce what? Growth hormone. Growth hormone is helping in what? The growth and development of the body. It acts upon our body cells which help in development of the body, like muscle cells and the bones. They are the major cells which help in showing the growth. So those cells are not allowed to multiply more, which helps in growth. So growth hormone is being inhibited. It is not produced by the pituitary gland. Why it is not produced? It is inhibited by which hormone? Somatostatin. From where this somatostatin is coming? It is coming from the hypothalamus, part of the brain. So somatostatin is an inhibitory hormone. It is inhibiting the pituitary gland. In the same way here, hypothalamus, gonadotropin releasing hormone is produced, and this gonadotropin hormone is acting as what now? As a stimulating hormone. Okay, as a stimulating hormone. It stimulates, okay, it stimulates the pituitary gland to produce the gonadotropins. Those gonadotropins are nothing but the hormones that will be released, that will be stimulating the organs like gonads, like testes and ovaries in males and females respectively. So here it is very clear for us now that the hypothalamus will be producing two types of hormones. First group are called as what? Stimulating hormones. The best example is gonadotropin hormone, and the inhibitory hormones, the best example is somatostatin. So here it is very clear for all of us that the hypothalamus is producing neurosecretory hormones or neurohormones, which are two types: stimulating hormones and inhibitory hormone. So now we are going to discuss about the pituitary gland, the first gland called as the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland, already we said that this is called as the master gland. Okay, pituitary gland is also called as the master gland. So why it is called as the master gland? Because all the other glands, either it is the thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, thymus gland, adrenal gland, or the gonads, or the pancreas, these are all under the control of what now? The pituitary gland. So that's why we are calling this as what now? Master gland we call it as. Now, if you are looking at the pituitary gland, first let us understand where this is located. Where this is located. If you are looking at the location, okay, it is present at the base of the brain. At the base of the brain. So it is present now at the base of the brain, or we can say at the base of the hypothalamus. We say at the base of the hypothalamus. Okay, at the base of the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland is present of the forebrain. Of the forebrain. Let us say at the base of the hypothalamus or the forebrain. Okay, exactly you should say that it is at the forebrain. Okay, base of the forebrain. Okay, base of the forebrain it is present. Base of the forebrain. Now, if you are seeing the brain, okay, if you are seeing the brain, now here, if it is this the brain, this region, the hypothalamus or the forebrain, diencephalon we call it as. At this region, you will be seeing the presence of what now? The pituitary gland. What is the size? How much size this pituitary gland will be? It is just of a pea size. Okay, it is just of a pea size. Okay, just of a pea size. And even if you are looking at its weight, okay, if you are looking at its weight, it just weighs half a gram. Okay, half a gram. The size is of pea size and it is just a half a gram of the pituitary gland will be weighing. Now, another major thing is that we have to remember here is that when we look at the pituitary gland, okay, that is now, for example, it is, let us say that this is the pituitary gland which is there present at the base of the forebrain. Base of the forebrain. Now, this pituitary gland is located in a socket like or in a bony socket like called as the sella turcica. Please remember, this is very important. Okay, sella turcica. Sella turcica is the place where or in which the pituitary gland is present. It is just like enclosed in this bony socket called as sella turcica. Sella turcica is the part of the sphenoid bone. Okay, sphenoid bone of the skull. Sphenoid bone of the skull. Sphenoid bone of the skull. So sella turcica. Exactly, you have to remember that the pituitary gland is present in a bony socket called as what? Sella turcica, which is the sphenoid part of the sphenoid bone of the skull. Okay, sphenoid bone of skull. Okay, of the skull. Now, here when we look at the pituitary gland, here pituitary gland is connected to the brain or the forebrain with a stalk-like structure. With a stalk-like structure. With a stalk-like structure. What is that stalk? There is a name that is given for this stalk called as the infundibulum. Okay, infundibulum. So here the stalk-like structure that is present, okay, connecting the pituitary gland to the forebrain or the hypothalamus region is called as infundibulum. That is the stalk. And here, if you are looking at the pituitary gland is having three regions we say. Okay, it is having three regions we say. The three regions are called as what? Anterior lobe. Okay, the first region is called as the anterior lobe. These are the simple words that I am using. Anterior lobe. And the middle region is called as what? Intermediate lobe we call it as. Okay, intermediate lobe. We are calling this as the intermediate lobe. And the other region we call it as the posterior lobe. Okay, we call it as the posterior lobe. So these are the three regions. Okay, these are the three regions of the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is connected to the hypothalamus region, by a stalk-like structure called as what? Infundibulum. So here, as we said that the pituitary gland is of three lobes: anterior lobe, intermediate lobe, posterior lobe. But in the humans, we say that it is of only two lobes. It is of only two lobes. So how is it? Why are we saying that it is of only two lobes? The anterior lobe, okay, the anterior lobe is now if you are saying that anterior lobe, okay, anterior lobe is also called as the adenohypophysis. Okay, adenohypophysis. Okay, adenohypophysis. Anterior lobe is also called as the adenohypophysis. Or otherwise it is also called as pars distalis. Okay, pars distalis. Okay, pars distalis. And the other one is the posterior lobe. Okay, the other one is called as the posterior lobe. Okay, so here posterior lobe of the pituitary gland is also called as the neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis. Okay, neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis. Okay, neurohypophysis, which is otherwise called as pars nervosa, which is also called as pars nervosa. Okay, it is also called as the pars nervosa. But here we did not mention anywhere intermediate lobe. Intermediate lobe. So why it is? Because remember that within the anterior lobe, this intermediate lobe will be merged. It will be merged, which means there will be no intermediate lobe. Okay, there will be no intermediate lobe. The intermediate lobe is also joined with what now? The anterior lobe. Okay, anterior lobe. So otherwise, okay, we have to make note that the intermediate lobe, okay, intermediate lobe in the human beings, in the human pituitary gland, this intermediate lobe is also known as what? Pars intermedia. Okay, pars intermedia. But this pars intermedia, okay, this pars intermedia is merged. It is joined with the anterior lobe. So anterior lobe is about 75%. Anterior lobe is of about 75%, whereas the posterior lobe is of only 25%. Or indirectly, we are saying that the anterior lobe is large in size. The anterior lobe is large in size, whereas the posterior lobe is small in size. It is small in size. So here in the humans, the pituitary gland is having two regions. One is called as the anterior lobe, adenohypophysis, or otherwise called as pars distalis. Other one is called as the posterior lobe, neurohypophysis, or otherwise called as pars nervosa. So we have to make note that there is no intermediate lobe, or otherwise the intermediate lobe is completely merged with the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. So here these are the two lobes that are there present in the human pituitary gland. So there are also different types of hormones that are produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland and posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. But here let me be very clear that the hormones are produced only from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Please remember, as I said, both are producing, but it is not true. We try to understand like that, but it is not true. That is, anterior lobe of the pituitary gland only produces the hormones, but here the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland will be storing hormones. So there are two hormones that will be stored in the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Rest all the other stimulating hormones are produced from the anterior lobe. So here you remember that the anterior lobe is involved in producing, producing hormones. But whereas the posterior lobe, only what? It will be storing the hormones, stores hormones. This is a very important thing that we have to keep in mind, and we should not get confused. Always remember, posterior lobe stores hormones. Only two hormones that we are going to discuss. Those hormones which are stored in the posterior lobe, and the other hormones that are produced are in the anterior lobe. So this in the next video, we are going to discuss about what are those hormones that are produced in the anterior lobe, what are those hormones that are stored in the posterior lobe. Hormones that are stored in the posterior lobe are actually synthesized or produced in the hypothalamus region of the brain. They are produced in the hypothalamus region of the brain. They are brought and they are stored in the posterior lobe. That's it. But whereas the anterior lobe will be producing the hormones that will be released into the blood, stimulating different glands that are present in our body to produce their respective hormones. So these are the points that we have to keep in mind in this video. Thank you so much.